Welcome back to Narrations. Some stories begin with heroes. Some begin with revolutions. And some begin with one small mistake made by someone everyone already believes is a problem. A Bug's Life is a story about fear, community, and discovering that even the smallest voice can change an entire system built on intimidation. On a small island beneath towering grass, a colony of ants works endlessly, carrying grain, organizing food, preparing offerings. Because every season, the grasshoppers come, led by Hopper. Cruel, intelligent, a ruler who understands power depends less on strength and more on fear. The ants gather food not for themselves, but for their oppressors. And no one questions it openly, because survival has taught obedience. Inside this colony lives Flik. Inventive, restless, the kind of ant whose mind moves faster than tradition allows. He builds machines, experiments constantly, dreams of making work easier. But inventions rarely function smoothly, and failure has become part of how others see him. An inconvenience. Someone who creates problems instead of stability, even when his intentions are good. Especially Princess Atta feels the pressure. The future queen already overwhelmed by responsibility. And Flik's unpredictability threatens the fragile order she struggles to maintain. Still, Flik keeps trying. Because some people cannot stop imagining better possibilities even when surrounded by systems resistant to change. Then disaster strikes. One accidental mistake. Flik's harvesting machine malfunctions. The food offering for the grasshoppers falls into the river below. Gone. Silence spreads across the colony. Because everyone understands the consequences immediately. Hopper will return expecting tribute. And now there is nothing to give. Fear consumes the ants. Not merely fear of punishment. Fear of disruption. Because oppressive systems train communities to blame disruption more easily than oppression itself. Flik becomes scapegoat instantly. And when Hopper arrives, the terror becomes real. The grasshoppers descend like storm clouds. Larger, louder, violent. Hopper rages. Demands the ants gather twice as much food before the season ends. And through intimidation, he reasserts control completely. Yet one detail matters profoundly. Hopper is afraid too. Not physically. Politically. He understands the ants vastly outnumber the grasshoppers. If they ever stop fearing, the system collapses. That insight becomes the film's emotional and philosophical core. After the disaster, Flik is blamed again. And eventually, the colony sends him away. Officially to recruit warriors. Unofficially to remove him from causing further problems. And so, the awkward inventor leaves home searching for heroes. What he finds instead is circus performers. A troupe of struggling insects mistaken for fierce warriors through complete misunderstanding. There is Heimlich the caterpillar, Slim the stick bug, Francis the ladybug. A chaotic group barely holding their own act together. Yet Flik, desperate for hope, mistakes them as saviors. And they mistake his offer as employment. Which leads everyone back toward the ant colony under false assumptions. The comedy here works beautifully. Because beneath the misunderstandings, there remains emotional sincerity. These circus bugs are failures too. Misfits. Outcasts. Creatures struggling to belong somewhere. Which means they understand Flik more than anyone realizes. At first, the colony believes help has arrived. Warriors. Protectors. Hope spreads cautiously. And for the first time, the ants imagine resistance might be possible. Meanwhile, Flik and Princess Atta grow closer. Because Atta begins seeing what others overlooked. Flik's inventions fail often. But his imagination carries courage the colony desperately lacks. And perhaps leadership requires more than maintaining tradition. Perhaps it requires envisioning change. Still, the truth cannot stay hidden forever. The circus bugs are exposed. Not warriors. Performers. And immediately, hope collapses. The colony turns against Flik again. Because disappointed communities often punish dreamers harshly after failed hope. Flik feels shattered. Not simply embarrassed. Because he genuinely wanted to help. Yet once again, his ideas seem to have made everything worse. Meanwhile, Hopper prepares to return. And this time, the ants have almost nothing left. Fear grows heavier than ever. But somewhere beneath humiliation and failure, a deeper truth is beginning to emerge. The ants may be small individually, yet together, they are far more powerful than they believe. And soon, someone will finally say it aloud. Flik feels defeated. The colony no longer trusts him. The circus bugs are exposed. And Hopper is returning. Everything seems worse than before. Because failed hope often hurts more deeply than hopelessness itself. The ants retreat back into fear. Back into obedience. And once again, the system Hopper built appears unshakable. But something important has changed beneath the surface. The colony has briefly imagined another possibility. And once people imagine freedom, fear loses some of its power forever. Meanwhile, the circus bugs prepare to leave. Humiliated. Disappointed. Yet even they now understand something about Flik. He was never selfish. Never foolish because he wanted attention. He genuinely believed life could become better for everyone. And sincerity matters. Especially among people accustomed to being dismissed as failures. Then comes revelation. The young ant who always believed in Flik, reminds the others of Hopper's greatest fear. The ants outnumber the grasshoppers enormously. They always have. The oppression survives only because the ants believe they are powerless. And suddenly, the story sharpens into something much larger than insects. Because systems built on intimidation often depend entirely on the obedience of those being controlled. Flik realizes the truth too late perhaps. Yet clearly now. The colony never needed warriors from outside. They needed belief in themselves. And with renewed determination, he returns. Not promising miracles. Not pretending certainty. Simply asking the ants to stop living in fear. At first, no one moves. Years of obedience cannot vanish instantly. But then, slowly, the colony begins standing together. And unity transforms everything. The final plan forms around Flik's greatest strength. Creativity. An enormous fake bird built to frighten the grasshoppers away. A ridiculous idea. And yet, possibly brilliant. The circus troupe joins willingly now. Not because they were mistaken for heroes. Because they have become friends. The performance begins as Hopper returns. The fake bird descends dramatically. And for one glorious moment, it works. The grasshoppers panic. Fear reversing direction completely. Because even tyrants become vulnerable when their confidence breaks. But then, rain arrives. The bird collapses. The illusion exposed. And suddenly, everything feels doomed again. Hopper erupts with fury. Not merely because of the trick. Because the ants dared resist at all. And in one of the film's most important scenes, he reveals his philosophy openly. The ants cannot be allowed to think for themselves. If they realize their strength, the grasshoppers lose everything. And there it is. The truth beneath oppression spoken clearly. Fear is never only about punishment. It is about preventing people from recognizing their collective power. But Hopper makes one mistake. He says this in front of the ants themselves. And for the first time, the colony truly hears it. The illusion shatters. Not the fake bird. The belief that they are helpless. The ants rise together. Thousands moving as one. And suddenly, the grasshoppers are overwhelmed completely. Not through violence alone. Through unity. Hopper flees. But Flik follows. The confrontation becomes personal now. The awkward inventor versus the tyrant who spent the entire story treating smallness as weakness. Rainstorms rage. Wind tears across the canyon. And Hopper still tries intimidation one final time. Mocking Flik. Calling him insignificant. But Flik no longer believes it. Because courage is not absence of fear. It is refusing to let fear define worth. The final defeat comes poetically. A real bird appears. Nature itself finishing what the fake one began. And Hopper, who ruled entirely through terror, becomes prey himself. The colony survives. But more importantly, it changes. Princess Atta grows into leadership with new confidence. The ants begin valuing creativity rather than fearing it. And Flik, once treated as problem, becomes catalyst for transformation. Not because he was strongest. Because he dared imagine something different. Even the circus bugs find belonging. No longer wandering failures. Connected to a community that appreciates them. The ending feels joyful not merely because villains are gone, but because fear no longer governs the colony. And perhaps that is why a bug's life remains so powerful. Because beneath the colorful animation and comedy, it tells a timeless story about systems of control. About how communities surrender power when convinced they are too small to matter. And about how change often begins with someone everyone underestimated. Flik never became traditional hero. He remained awkward, inventive, different. But sometimes difference is exactly what allows someone to see possibilities others cannot. A bug's life isn't just about ants fighting grasshoppers. It's about realizing fear only works as long as people believe they are powerless, and that even the smallest voices can change the world when they stand together. Sometimes the person everyone thinks is a problem becomes the one who shows everyone else how strong they really are. If you enjoyed listening to this narration, please like, share, and subscribe for more movie stories.